Before I get into the main theme of this video, just a quick word about something I've noticed a few subscribers have asked me to talk about particular subjects that are in the news. Um, Now, I want to be clear on this. I'm very grateful for those contributions, and I'm grateful that people value my input and value what I have to say on the matter. But I do have to say that I don't generally do requests. Because I feel it would become a bit procedural in the sense that I would then feel, well, I'm obliged to make that video. I'm sort of, I better make that video. I've always done this a bit spontaneously. I've never planned out videos. It really is spontaneous. Like I could decide 5 minutes before I upload something to make it. And also, there's a lot of things that go on in the news. I simply can't cover everything at once. But this is not to diminish that those issues are important, and it's not that I'm not interested in them. It's just that there really is a lot going on at once, and I may cover them anyway. But what I would say is, I don't want to put anyone off contributions to my channel. Certainly, that is the sort of thing that would be good to bring up in a live stream. So please do. Um, that having been said, this video. Suffragettes versus suffragists. Now, recently there was a controversy over the naming of the London Overground stations, lines, I should say. And although Sadiq Khan didn't personally name them, he was certainly involved in the promotion and enthusiastically so. One of the main critiques of that is it was a bit of virtue signalling in light of a mayoralty that has often been accused of taking its eye off the bat with more important and pressing issues like knife crime. But I think that one of those lines caused particular controversy. It was the suffragette line. Now it was pointed out that the picture that they had a statue of Millicent Fawcett. Fawcett was not a suffragette; she was a suffragist. And often the two terms are conflated, but actually there is a key difference. Both movements believed in votes for women. The suffragettes were perhaps more directly linked, evolutionary linked to the Great Reform Acts, which got universal suffrage for men. And even that, it's something that's sometimes forgotten. Men didn't have universal suffrage for a long time either. Um, but that, sort of followed on from that way of thinking, well, men have got it now, it's time for women. The suffragettes likewise wanted votes for women, but they took the attitude of any means necessary. And a little bit like the eco-zealots today, they did not care about public opinion. Um, Between 1912 and 1914, which is considered the high watermark of the suffragette movement, we could pinpoint 1913 actually specifically, they carried out an extensive bombing campaign. It may have killed as many as 4 people, and it wounded many others. They even bombed the house of David Lloyd George. One notable incident was Emily Davison, famously trying to attach a sash to the King's horse at Epsom, and it killed her. Now, she was held up as a martyr, but what's interesting is she actually got a return ticket. I've looked into that story. She actually got a return ticket. If she wanted to kill herself to be a martyr for the cause, why would she have got a return ticket? I think she came from the home counties into Epsom or from London into Epsom. Um, so it was an accident. It was an incredibly reckless thing to do, putting her own life in danger and putting the life of the jockey in danger. I understand the jockey said that woman haunted me for the rest of my life because it was the last thing he saw. But inevitably, she did become a martyr. She had thousands at her funeral. But by their own admission, the suffragettes were terrorists. They were violent. And it's easy to sort of, lionize them now, but the reality is a lot of people at the time, including many women, basically saw them as extremists. And this wasn't that they were the only people trying to get votes for women. The suffragists were also doing this. The suffragettes headed by the Pankhursts, the suffragists by women like Millicent Fawcett. I think it's high time the suffragists got more attention because this narrative that women got the vote as a direct result of the bombing campaign, I think, is deserves a bit of scrutiny. There were many things that got women the vote. There was changing public attitudes. There was a changing labour market in World War One because women were doing jobs that men had done as men were on the front, particularly in factory and munitions work, um, railways and other areas that were reserved occupations, but women done a lot of those jobs. Um, and they done it very well. They were a critical part of the war effort. So in a way, it was recognizing that contribution they had made. There wasn't full women's suffrage until 1928 under the Tory Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin. So partial suffrage in 1918 under the People's Representation Act, full suffrage in 1928. The partial suffrage was only for women over 30. So I think it's a false conclusion to say the bombing campaign of 1913 got women the vote in 1928. It was incredibly unpopular. They were unpopular. Um, so actually, when the eco-zealots today compare themselves to the suffragettes, they may not be wrong because they were deemed extremists, and so were the eco-zealots. But what they conclude is, oh, but look, they got women the vote. No, it's time the suffragists got more attention. They did not use as dramatic methods, they used lobbying, they used more peaceful methods. But I would argue ultimately it was their efforts that played more of a role than the deeply unpopular militant campaign of the suffragettes. A famous piece of popular culture with this was Mrs. Banks and Mary Poppins, as portrayed by the late Glynis Johns, Sister Suffragette, which was set in 1910. But yes, this is a very, very important thing because I think for over 100 years people have assumed the violent suffragette movement got women the vote. I'm not convinced it did. I think it was a range of factors, and I think it's time the suffragists got more attention. So, any historians out there might be able to set the record straight on this, but I do think the suffragists deserve a lot more attention. One last thing, there was a film a few years with Carey Mulligan, and it was called Suffragette. It focused on the militant campaign, and as much as it was a good film dramatically, it led to the same conclusion that they got women the vote. That really is a matter of debate.